Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Aisha, your host. If you've encountered Muslims who are skipping lunch at work and all of a sudden are no longer drinking their morning coffee and are wondering what's going on, well, I'm here today to help you find some answers to these questions. Muslims around the world have recently welcomed the blessed month of Ramadan, where Muslims abstain from eating and drinking by fasting from sunrise to sunset for 30 days. Let's sit down with Dr. Shabir Ally to learn a little bit more about why this is considered such a blessed and important month for Muslims. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shabir.
My pleasure to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit about the month of Ramadan?
Ramadan is a month in which Muslims observe fasting during the daylight hours, and fasting entails refraining from eating, drinking, or satisfying the baser desires. This is a spiritual exercise that brings a Muslim closer to God, because when we deny the animal instincts in us, we heighten the spiritual aspect and our connection with God, who is the source of our moral being.
And why is this month considered so blessed for Muslims?
For Muslims, this month is blessed because the Quran itself says that God has made this a blessed month. There are 12 months in the year. It's a lunar calendar, the 9th month being the month of Ramadan. The Quran itself says that God has revealed the Quran during this month. And that is interpreted by many to mean that the first occasion when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was visited by the angel Gabriel, that was during the month of Ramadan. And that has given this month its blessedness. So for that reason, many Muslims will devoutly read the Quran a lot during this month. Some will try to finish the entire book. For this purpose, the Quran is divided up into 30 sections, and the idea being that you can read one section each day, and you would complete reading the book in the entire month.
Can you tell us a little bit about what a typical life is in the day of a Muslim when they're fasting, because they're not eating for a very long time?
Mm-hmm. Well, typically a Muslim will get up early in the morning before dawn and have a pre-dawn meal, and then start the fasting soon after that. The Muslims pray regularly 5 times per day, in and outside of Ramadan, whether they're fasting or not. And of course, I'm speaking about devout Muslims, because some Muslims may not observe this, but this is what is expected of a devout Muslim. The morning prayer is the first one, so that will be offered before the sun rises. Then after midday, there will be another prayer. Then late afternoon, a third prayer. After the sun sets, another prayer. And these are time markers that were simple for people in ancient times. They didn't have watches, but they may have had sundials. And even if they didn't have a sundial, they could just simply observe the passing of day and night, the cycle as it goes on. And then finally, there is a late night prayer, similar to, I guess, for example, a Christian child being taught to pray before going to bed. That's one of the last things you do. So that makes the 5 prayers during the day. Now, a Muslim who generally may not have been observing these prayers may become more conscious of the need to do these during the month of Ramadan. And this is where our non-Muslim friends and co-workers and classmates and teachers and employers may need to be aware of how to help and how to understand a Muslim who is trying to observe these practices during the month of Ramadan.
And there's an additional night prayer that doesn't occur in regular outside of Ramadan, right?
Yes, and this is referred to as the Taraweeh prayer. It's an Arabic word which is related to the idea of rest, and probably gets this name for the fact that because it's a long prayer, it's prayed in segments with short rests in between. It is an optional prayer. Some think that it's more required than optional, but the best interpretation of this seems to be that it is an optional prayer, though it is highly desirable, and many Muslims make it a point to perform this prayer. What makes it especially long is that the Quran is often read, large portions of it during the prayer. I spoke already about Muslims trying to read the Quran for themselves,
yes.
One portion a day to finish it in the entire month. Well, in a similar manner, in many mosques, one portion of the Quran of the 1/30th part will be read each night during the night prayers. Thus the entire Quran will be read throughout the prayer and during the month. And in many mosques, the persons who read the Quran are trained memorizers. They have memorized the entire book. So it's actually a spectacle to witness, where we might have 2 or 3 such reciters in the congregation, usually standing close to each other, such that if one of them slips and recites incorrectly, the other one will correct him from memory. And that gives Muslims the assurance that the Quran is preserved in the hearts of people. Men and women have memorized the entire Quran. In fact, many children graduate from schools. Well, perhaps not graduate is the right word, but they are in schools, and then by the ages of 7 sometimes, they would have memorized the entire Quran. More typically, by the age of 10, a child may have memorized the entire Quran.
Oh. And are there any exceptions for Muslims when it comes to fasting?
Yes, fasting is only a requirement for those who are able-bodied, those who can actually manage it without any harm to health or well-being. So those who are sick, according to the Quran, in the 2nd chapter, the 184th verse, can fast an equal number of days later on when they get better. So too for the person who is traveling. Now, of course, nowadays traveling is more luxurious than arduous, whereas in the past it was the opposite. But still, traveling displaces you. You may not know where you will get your meal when it comes time to breaking your fast. There will be a lot of inconveniences that could make you irritable and so on. So we can still appreciate, even in our present circumstances, that God has given us this permission to not fast on the days when we are traveling, but we can fast an equal number of other days after the month of Ramadan is over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.